saw that a few people lately asked me how I looked at the single whip movement in a yang style Tai Chi form. And once I go through this, a lot of times people say, well, where did you learn that? How did you learn to do it that particular way? That's a pretty good question, but about almost 40 years ago when I started doing martial arts, I was like most people, and I just did what I was told. I just blindly listened to do it this way, and I practiced. And relatively early in my years as an instructor, I had an opportunity to work with a guy named Eric, who was a very unique martial artist. He was extremely bright, way more experienced than I was at the time, and a tremendous athlete. And so when he first started working, he says, look, I'm not going to teach you another move or another application. What I'm going to teach you is how to learn. And the most important thing I can tell you is, do not believe a word I say. If you just blindly believe me, you'll never learn. So he encouraged me to question everything, to analyze everything, and to break it down and make sure that I understood it, and that you, like some people say, pressure tested it. So how I do things now is I look at every movement and I analyze it. And I analyze it very carefully. I start by figuring out what the exact weapon is. What exactly am I bringing to target? And then what's the exact point of impact in the movement? Where does my weapon meet the point of impact? And then what's the best path? What's the exact path I have to take so that I can do the right things in terms of how all the rest of my body works, and what has to rotate here, and what has to step there, and everything else, so that I can bring as much mass and as much speed to target as possible, so that weapon moves through space at the highest possible rate of speed with as much mass behind it as possible, depending on the type of movement it is. And this also lets me understand, well, what type of power am I trying to generate? Is this, am I thrusting through the object? Am I trying to move the object? Am I trying to break the object? And understanding what my body mechanics have to be, what my structure has to be at the beginning and the end of each movement through the whole transition. One thing I see a lot that, I've been fortunate this many years, I've still got all good joints, and I'll be 64 here in a couple of weeks, is that I don't put stress on my connective tissues. And when you do something slow, you can twist a joint this way and make a tendon stop your body mass moving when you explode forward or turn in a particular fashion, instead of having your big muscle groups stop it. If you do it slow, you may never realize it, but I pay a lot of attention to making sure that I'm not putting undue stress on any connective tissues as I go through a motion, so that it frees my body to move as fast as possible. Because a lot of times your body will slow something down some, because if you're really explosive with it, you twist the knee, you twist the back. I also look at what type of joint manipulation can I do, and I don't mean by connecting on a joint, but are the things I can do rotationally during the course of a motion, and how I spin or twist or turn a hand instead of it just going, there's something more to it than it just the weapon being created and going from point A to point B. So I like to talk about that, when do I make the weapon? And not always, but in a lot of cases, I don't want to make the weapon until the fraction of a second before impact. As an example, like with a palm strike, I don't have to do this and make that as stiff as possible and try and push that through space. I might start like this, and as I'm moving through and turning my hip and all those other good things, my hand is starting off, fingertips pointing at my point of impact, and then it turns and that pops in at the last second, so that I get that slight upward motion that's necessary for a palm thrust. Same thing with a fist. I don't make a big tight fist and then throw it out there. I throw a very relaxed, loose fist right to the point of impact, and then it tightens up so I have a strong weapon, and then it relaxes. So I think that's important. So as we kind of go into the first part of this, I'll look on how I'm going to do single whip is, once we've made this position, which I've seen it a bunch of different ways, I look at, you gotta, when you're doing something, you should be doing something. So as this pulls up, it has to be a weapon. And that's a weapon. It could be 5 fingers, it could be 3 fingers, but it has to have force to it, not something that collapses. Once you've made this position, you have a weapon that's already made, and it's ready to fire as long as you don't straighten the arm out. I sometimes see people straighten that arm out entirely in this move, which creates another issue in that if I'm going to fire the weapon, the first thing I have to do is undo this straight arm. So obviously most martial arts people say a straight arm is a broken arm. It's also an arm that has to undo to do, whereas if I'm here, this is ready to, I can fire it anytime I want to without having to do anything to go to target. So that's that. So all the mechanics I'm going to go through here are very visible. They're external, plain, simple, external body mechanics. And a lot of times people say, well, geez, I didn't see anything internal in that. Well, of course you did. It's internal, right? Internal to me, I look at internal mechanics as I can't see it, but external mechanics as I can see it. And good internal mechanics do not make up for bad external mechanics. I believe that internal mechanics are there to complement the external, but if what you're doing externally doesn't work, you're really fighting against yourself. So let's go ahead and go through this. I'm going to take it from when you finish push right here. So I've done push and now I'm going to turn. I don't think you should ever turn empty. And what I mean by that is with nothing happening over here. I'm either turning because I think something's happening here or I'm doing something in the course of this turn. One way I look at it as I turn, my right foot comes in and my left foot goes out would be as if this was a grab or a redirection. Here's something coming this way and I'm here and I grab them, redirect them, and throw them. They're not going to go here. They're going to go this direction. But I can do it with speed. And same thing if I just said, well, maybe I'm striking it there. If I turn onto this leg without me committing weight this way, these hands don't really have anything. You're doing nothing but leading with your face. You're just turning. So I want to make sure I have something in that motion. And then I pull back, and this is again creating that weapon, and again, it could be a strike. The next part of this is stepping out and doing an actual whipping motion. I've always thought if the name of the form was single whip, there should be something whip-like in it. So when I step out, I want to make sure that when my heel comes down, that my hips aren't towards target yet. Because I want to make a rotational motion out of the strike. So, going back at it, I'll do the whole thing for a sec. Going from here, it's a grab, it's a chop, it's a turn, bring my weight onto my left side. I pull back, again I can do that violently. I've created a good weapon, maybe I've done a block, maybe I've hit with this. And then when I step out, my belly button's pointing that way so that I can rotate violently onto this foot. And then my point of impact, I'm as far away from here to here as I can be. I want to be like that because I shortened that, which meant this whipping motion was a lot smaller than it could have been. It's a lot less powerful. So I come through, and you see my hip is all the way back now. This is sort of the follow through. Maybe I smack you upside the head over here. But then this palm is now going to fire at a target from there. Again, my hip was here. Then my hip pushed that hand out. And now I've actually done something with each move of single whip. I had a violent ability to strike here. I had a violent ability to throw or turn or strike. Could I have a violent rotational strike and a violent forward hand strike? One thing I like to point out in this is that the way I look at left foot forward, left hand striking is at the point of impact position, if it's a straight on strike, is the same regardless of what the movement is. A lot of people do repulse the monkey. It's the same position as single whip, and some versions, we've seen the slanting fly, it's the same thing. Slanting fly, repulse the monkey, single whip. This structure is the same, because if it's the best structure for one of them, it's going to be the best structure for all of them, because at the end of the day, they're all doing the same thing. And that's my 2 cents worth on single whip.